Welcome to the channel Tribe. In this Ask Me Anything session, we are having Vikas Mittal, who will be discussing on testing career problems, feeling left out, ask how to prosper.
Welcome, Vikas, once again. And I think let's jump right into business in the interest of time. So the first question which we have, Vikas, from the community is, which is again at a very early stage of career, for early stage careers. There is a vibe in the fresher market that the testing is soon going to be dead, or they are not going to earn enough in this field. Our field might lose some bright minds in the early stage due to these biases and assumptions. How do you think we should improve the situation, and more importantly, change this narrative which is being set by some practitioners?
Okay, so I think this is not a new question, Ashutosh. Actually, when I started out way back in 2002, at that point of time, also this was a perception. And even though testing has not even evolved at that stage, to be really honest, I started out myself as a developer and then moved to testing by choice. Right,
Okay.
a lot of people in larger IT service company are pushed towards testing. I moved to testing by choice because I got bored being a developer.
Okay.
So that is something which I've been hearing for almost 20 years, that testing is going to be dead. But I think one thing which you would realize in the last 20 years, what really has happened, the way we operate the software development as a function has evolved a lot. And I do agree, there was a phase in between when Agile was coming into prominence and people were learning how to really use Agile, that there was a mindset that you don't need testers or independent testers, and there's nothing called testers in Agile teams. A lot of companies went that way. In fact, I also helped a couple of customers go that route. But the same customers came back to me 2 years later that now we are not able to manage the mess. Can we get an independent testing team back? So it's not a one shoe fit all. Testing is never going to be dead. But I think what is going to be dead definitely is the attitude which people had about testing, that I don't really need to have skills to be in testing.
Okay.
A lot of times, and I was really frustrated by that conversation which I had with leadership and with others. There was always that effort to reduce the barrier of people entering into testing. I'm not against people with no formal engineering degree to get into technology. In fact, if you see today, companies like Facebook and Twitter are actually inducting people right out of school.
Cool.
Right?
That's true.
But there was always a mindset that you don't need really real techies to be in testing. Why can't we hire people from BCom background, BBA background, non-tech background into testing? I think that perception has changed largely now because with automation picking up, people realize that testing also requires coding skills. And I think one thing which the pandemic has done really well for testing as a community, finally people who are testers are getting equally or more paid than developers.
Okay, that's
So
interesting.
I think one of the biggest skill which is on shortfall right now, and I think a lot of people who are hiring managers here on the discussion today would realize test automation skill is the topmost short skill right now in the industry. Obviously, developers are in short supply, but test automation is also short supply. I am hiring people like left, right, and center, right? And I can tell you from my own experience, the the multiplication factor for test automation has gone high as 4x, 5x of experience,
My goodness.
which is equivalent to developers, right? And I have over the last 7 years, I have hired almost 3,000 plus test professionals.
My goodness.
So I know the testing is never going to be dead. It is going to be there. But yes, guys, if you believe that you're going to have the same legacy of just chilling in the testing job, that's definitely going to be dead. You have to be always relevant and always be on your toes and keep yourself technically aware. Till the time you're able to do that, there's no other jobs in testing.
That's true. So that's what is the general perception also. Like if automation comes in the manufacturing sector, they'll say that the laborers' jobs are dead. But it's not that their jobs are not dead. It's just that jobs are getting more skillful, and people have to acquire the relevant skills to stay relevant.
Correct.
Otherwise, so it's not that the jobs are going to be dead. People might get irrelevant irrelevant if they don't do the notch.
And I can
I think
actually
that's
give you an example for that also. Recently, for one of the largest clothing brand in the world, I completed a project for them where we actually automated everything. Right? When I say everything, not 100%, but yeah, almost 90% of the effort we automated. But that did not mean that the testers who were aligned on that project were let go. They would actually
yeah,
repurpose in other initiatives, other projects.
that's true. That's true. I think that's a very reassuring comment from you, and coming from someone like you who is at a leadership position, senior leadership position, and who has hired so many professionals. I think the community members and the testers in general should feel more reassured. Now, I'll pick up this pick up a cue from this question and uh, link it to the another question which a community member asked. Many testers in one similar are in a similar situation currently. As you said, the automation testers are demanding are getting 4x or 5x of their current salaries. And to a normal tester, this might look a good path to follow, considering the salary multipliers which we have there. But inherently, they are not so much into automation coding, and they don't like automation coding. Uh, like everybody doesn't want to be a coder, and they are then confused. How should they stay relevant? So considering that dilemma, that dichotomy of getting several salary multipliers at one point and not liking coding slash automation so much, how do you solve this dichotomy in their head?
So I think I think I'm also to be blamed partly for it, because I think one thing which we all started positioning to test engineers, that automation is the only way you can go.
Yeah,
If you have to really gain or secure your career as a tester, automation is the only way you have to go. I think a lot of project managers, without even understanding the craft of testing, started pushing their team members towards automation. And like you rightly said, not everybody enjoys coding. Not everybody really likes to get into the code. But that is not the only path which exists for you as a tester. See, one thing which you need to really analyze and realize is that your value as a tester is not about finding defects. That is
correct.
a byproduct of what you do. Your value as a test engineer on a team is somebody who can critically analyze the customer need, who can critically analyze the requirement which has been given and identify the gap in those two things.
Correct.
So finding a defect, logging a defect is essentially a byproduct or actually the end product of what we do. But that is not our job. Our job is not to find defects. Our job is to ensure that the customer has a good experience when using a product. So a natural progression for a lot of good test engineers, right, can actually be to become good product owners. In fact, in the
Yeah,
last 12 months, I have essentially coached and mentored around 45 test engineers, senior test engineers who have been a functional test engineer all through life. I don't like the word manual tester, who have been basically the functional test engineers all through their life. I've coached and mentored them to go and be product owners. I think one thing, if you would realize in the agile community, a lot of scrum masters try to hide that they are all from testing backgrounds.
testing background. That's true. That's true.
70% of the scrum masters in agile are from testing background, and if you would ask them, they would quickly change their LinkedIn profile to reflect as if they were a product guy from the day one.
Yeah, that's true.
But
That's true.
I am of a firm belief that for a good test engineer, a better career growth path is not to be a scrum master, is actually to be the product owner,
Yeah,
because that is where you create much more value, not only
value.
for the company, the product, but yourself. A product owner is paid higher than a developer. So
That's true.
guys, just keep that in mind. If you go down that path of being a product owner, you're actually getting paid more than anyone on the team.
That's
That is
certainly true.
one path, right? The other element is like, you see, the other element of growth for a lot of test engineers who don't want to code, right? There are a lot of functions within testing where you can go. There is a huge element of gap which is today with people who can really monitor and understand the production platforms. You don't need
Yeah,
coding skills there, you need analytical skills there. The production monitoring tools are not difficult to learn. You can easily grasp what they are doing, and you can easily correlate that data back to the application and give more insight. Two people from my team recently graduated from being functional test engineers to be data scientists. Those guys
Wonderful.
were not good in coding, but they were good in
Yeah,
analytical skills. So they actually went through that 6 months training with our data science team, and they worked in parallel with them. Obviously, these guys put in extra effort, extra time, and now they have actually moved from being test engineers to data scientist roles. I have
great.
few more examples from my previous organization, Infogain, where I had people move from being test engineers to data scientists. See, so
That's true.
the crux of the story is understand what is your key strength as a tester. It is your analytical skills, which is your key strength, and then leverage that analytical skills to identify what is the right path for you.
That's
Automation is
that's
not the only top path.
that's very right, and that's very relevant again. That's very, at hindsight, it might look very obvious that as functional testers, we have the most broader view of the system. Developers might have the most, let's say, a most narrow view of the system, considering they're only working for one module. And product owner role is the next obvious role which might come in somebody's head. But then that's the point that as much as it look obvious, we are so cliched in our thought
Yes.
process that we don't look around that, don't broaden our horizons. So I think that's a very valid point, and I think people who are attending this or people who might watch this later on YouTube, etc., they might now start to trigger this thought in their mind. I think that's a very reassuring point again. Okay, this again, I'll take a cue from this question again. This is a question which actually someone really asked, that after 8 to 12 years, many testers think about exploring possibilities to move to other functions like PM or delivery. So now we agree that there is a transition which should happen in that roles, product owners, product managers, delivery. How do you carry about this transition? How do we execute this transition in our organizations? So any thoughts on how do we execute this plan of moving to a product owner role or moving to a PM role in our organizations? How do we execute this?
So I think I think one way for any career progression, right? For any career progression, one thing which is critical is to identify a good mentor,
Yeah,
somebody with whom you can be yourself. What typically happens, and that is the reason why a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn for mentoring, is that if you're looking out for a mentor within your own organization, at times you have a feeling of being judged,
yeah,
that you cannot really be open and really share or talk about your weaknesses with somebody within your organization. But fortunately, I was lucky enough to have those kind of mentors through my career within my own organization. But I think the first step is identify a mentor in your target career goal or career path where you want to be. Identify a good mentor who can really guide you. The second element for you to transition is a change of mindset. I
yeah.
think a lot of people believe that they deserve that role, that I deserve a promotion, I deserve to be a
That's true.
manager. I've spent so many years in the industry that now I deserve to
Yeah,
be
that's
a
true.
manager. So that feeling of entitlement of being deserving
That's true.
is different. You deserve because of your skill, but don't feel
Skills.
entitled to get it.
Your
Right?
age is not your merit.
Correct. Experience is not the merit, right? Because see, there's one thing which I think it's a saying that I have 11 years experience, right? But been doing the same thing which I did in my first year of career for next 10 years. So now
Yeah,
I know how to do it 10 times better, but I have the same experience. Plus, in the 11 years, I've done 11 different things. So who is more experienced, right? So that is the problem with the experience. I think the other thing which you ask, can you transition? First step is identify a good mentor who can really guide you and who is already performing that role. Second is when you are in those projects, right? You already have people performing those roles. Observe what they are doing right and what they are doing wrong.
yeah.
So being observant is another good quality for any test engineer, right? I think that is one of the base things which I look when I hire someone, that how observant are they,
Yeah.
right? So if you have good observation power, then you can actually understand and don't make the same mistakes which probably the person you are aspiring to be is making. The third thing, which I think which has helped me a lot, is try to open up and ask questions from people who are probably performing that role or a role higher. So whenever I aspire to get to a role, I don't talk to the people only to the person who's doing that role. I talk 2 levels up
Yeah.
to understand what is their expectation from that role, because then I can chart out my growth plan or my progression plan or learning path to reach those expectations levels. I think these are the three things which I have been following throughout my career, and which has always helped me to be in good shape.
Yeah. I think again one of the very relevant points which I will pick up from this is the change of mindset, the mindset of entitlement. I think if we can do execute that part in our heads, a lot of us will be sorted in general of how to because that's the most difficult part.
Yes.
I think to change your own mindset of not feeling entitled and feeling that you still have to do a lot of stuff in your career, and then only you'll be able to break through shackles.
The element to that, Ashutosh, also is that a lot of people fear about asking, right? And that is something which I've always been not. I've never been fearful of asking what I deserve.
Yeah.
And that deserve is not entitlement. It is basically I have proven that I can do it. Now you give it to me.
Yeah. So my thing with asking is that if you ask and if you ask it in the right way, not in some sort of I did. So there is the one way to ask is that I need this. The other way to ask is that I think we can work this out in this way. So there are
Absolutely.
ways to communicate, and that's what we need to actually sort this out. I think this is the answer to this question by Dayaniti Karunakaran also. She asked this question. I quickly share this on on stage, which you just answered, at how do you find the right mentor for QA career path, and what is the one small change in habits you did to become who you are today? I think you told about multiple habits of being observant, of asking 2 levels up. I think this question is now answered. This brings to me to my next question. So, Vikas, you in your life, in your career, has done a lot of certifications. So, somebody in the community asked, how do you feel about certifications for career growth? Can they really help us grow?
Okay, so this is something which I felt in my early years that a certification would really help me grow, and I can really stand out of the crowd with those certifications. And over the years, I've seen people going for a lot of certifications. So certification is a double-edged sword, right? If you have the knowledge, then a certification is to back you up. That okay,
Correct.
I have my knowledge and I am accredited by a recognized as well. But if you don't have a knowledge and you throw certification in the face of the interviewer, then you actually are already raising the bar of expectations. I've seen so many people coming to for discussions with me, my team, and they say I'm Scrum certified, I'm a certified PO, I'm a XYZ certified from this on Selenium, I'm from that part on Selenium. And when they are not even able to answer basic questions, so immediately you feel let down. Or even like it's like whenever Sachin Tendulkar would make a 80, you would still feel okay, he's not done his job. Because the
Yeah,
expectation is always hit a century.
that's what's happening to Virat Kohli right now, right? Everybody wants
Correct.
him to
That is
hit
what is
100.
happening to Virat Kohli right now, and that is what happens with certifications.
Yeah.
So, certifications from my point, if you have a knowledge, go ahead and add it to validate what your knowledge. But if you don't have a knowledge, then stay away from certification. In general, now I prefer to stay away from certifications because certifications are like right now being distributed like candies to kids. Anybody who is willing to pay can get a certification.
That's true.
So I'm not a firm believer in certifications, and that is not my view. A lot of leaders in the industry which I talk to, not a lot of them place any value in certifications anymore.
Yeah. What we hear from people and what from my experience is that certifications might give you a foot in the door,
Yes,
but it might not give you the seat on the sofa.
correct. It may help you in shortlisting, but not the job.
Not the job. So that's So that's the thing which we had. Okay. So Kumar Praveen from PM Tech has a question which I'll show on stage. Again, quite behavioral question. In current cost context, what are must skills for a QA manager other than the behavioral ones?
There's no QA manager anymore. To be honest, there's no QA manager role anymore. Unless and until you are in a product company, if you talk about a typical services company, there's no role called QA manager anymore, right?
Okay.
And I've led uh, two services companies as head of testing. I can tell you there's no role of QA manager anymore. There is definitely a role of QA specialist. There is a role of principal QA specialist, but not manager per se. See, essentially, let's first understand what do you really mean by a QA manager or a manager per se. In India, the people associate the designation manager as something with prestige and pay,
Pay.
right? That is really what you aspire. A lot of us people who actually become managers actually become more people manager than actually
That's
managing a function. That is the reason why if you see a lot of companies have started segregating these designations or roles.
yeah.
So a lot of companies have the roles principals now. The principal is still supposed to be hands-on and at the same time be a guide and mentor to the team.
Correct.
Right. A people manager or delivery manager is something very separate. When you talk about a delivery manager, he's not supposed to be somebody who is guiding and mentoring people. He's supposed to be someone who is managing the delivery of the project and people on the project.
Exactly. Exactly.
Unless and until you are in a product company where probably QA is still a bigger separate function, you may have those roles of QA manager existing. Or if you are running a big engagement with as part of a services company, you may still have those test delivery manager kind of roles. But yeah, so if for you to be a effective QA manager, I think one thing which I find missing in a lot of people who aspiring to be QA manager is the ability to define what is the right strategy to test.
Correct.
Their inability to understand the technical architectures and then guide or mentor their teams on what is the right way of testing the applications they are working upon. So if you want to differentiate yourself from the crowd of being a good QA manager or principal QA, I think one thing which you should focus on as a growth path, apart from a lot of behavioral skills, is for you to be aware, if not expert, on what is the latest in tech, how the different architectures are being implemented, how you can really define an effective testing strategy, and measure the effectiveness and efficiency of testing. I think we need to get away from those age-old metrics of number of test cases executed, pass, fail, all those things. Find different ways where you can measure and show value as a testing function.
God, yeah, that's very relevant. Again, that's very relevant because as test managers, we end up becoming people managers more than test managers, and that's where the problem I and we would not improve our forecasting skills or estimation skills. That's not going no one will stress out that they start handling people more and people issues they'll involve themselves with people. Well, just stop having being not so hands on, and that's what issue causes. Okay, this is an interesting question, Vikas. This is from both the sides again. This is from Tara, who is a senior QA at Sophos from Varanasi. I like to fill product gap, which makes UX very good. At the same time, I also like to deep dive in tech like AWS, Kubernetes. So as a tester, what is good to go in product or to go in cloud tech? My aspiration is to be a CTO. I think she has started a long-term path for herself and she has interest in both the directions. So she wants some clarity on this. And I think that's this part of the question a lot of people said in general also.
Okay. So Tara, if you actually want to be a CTO, right, then I think you should be doing both. Because a CTO is not only about how good I am at coding, how good am I at defining architectures. A CTO's role, again, is something which is very wrongly interpreted by a lot of us, is that Chief Technology Officer. That is how the acronym essentially stands, right? But technology is not all about your coding skills, your architectural skills, right? It is also about creating a good user experience. A lot of the design or the user experience teams actually report into the CTOs. You don't have a separate, or these teams don't report into product. A product function is completely separate. All these teams actually report into the CTO. And if you are somebody who has both the skills, then probably you are good at becoming or going to that level of a CTO. I think one thing which you're missing there is the data tech. So you really also need to catch up on the data skills.
So I generally believe data skills is now for everyone. Everyone needs to be hands-on on data, because even if you're a marketer, even if you're a salesperson, you need to be hands-on on data, because data gives you a structured path to progress. So I think it is very important for everyone to be aware of. I think this was a good question, and I think this was handled well also. Next question is, Vikas, in general, which is a normal question in any IT practitioner's mind, or let's say in any professional's mind these days. What is the optimal number of years to stay in the same company? We see strong arguments on both sides of this question. What would be your take on this? Some people say you should elongate your career. Some people say you should stay relevant and keep switching. And so that's the dichotomy again here.
I think the good answer to that is the CEO of Twitter swapped first 4 companies every 6 months, and then he stayed in Twitter for next 10 years.
Yes, that's a rare example that people generally observe and see.
That was an example quoted by a lot of recruiters, that if a recruiter was probably reviewing his profile when he was joining Twitter, then he would not have even been interviewed. See, so answer to that is essentially, I can give you from my own journey, right? I stayed in my first company for 2.5 years. I stayed in my next company after that for 1.5 years. I stayed in my next company after that for almost 10 years. And then I switched after 4.5 years. And now I'm in my current role, I'm in for the last 3 years. So I think there's no guideline per se that this is a good amount of tenure to be in a company. I think you need to evaluate and that is something which I tell very openly to all my teams also. Even when you're in a job, you're basically behaving like a buyer and a consumer. Your company is the buyer and you are a seller in one point of context. If you reverse the role, then you are the buyer and your company is the seller. Till the time both of us are able to sell something to each other, you should continue in that company. The moment you feel that your company is not able to sell you anything new in terms of career growth, in terms of your financial growth, in terms of giving you more opportunities to work on something new, it is time to switch. But till the time you're able to learn something new, you're able to add on to your skills, don't always switch for money. See, I've never switched my jobs for money. Money will always come by. Till the time you're good at your skills, you'll always make up for money. But if you are in a job, if you are in a project where you're learning new skills, try to stay away from the temptation of money, because the next company can give you probably 100% hike. What if they put you into a project where you're not learning anything? Then in the next 2 years, you'll be always again be behind the market and not employable. I've seen so many people who switch so many jobs, and at the end of the day, they are out of the market.
Yeah, that's true. And this reminds me of a quote from Harsha Bogde. This is a very famous seminar which he did years back for in Ahmedabad. He says, if you keep scoring runs, dollars will follow. I think that's what you're also trying to say, that if you're skillful, the money will come in later, sooner or later.
And nothing has proved it more than this pandemic. I recently hired a guy who was at 7 years experience working in a small company in Ahmedabad, and his salary was, I think, around 5 LPA for 7 years. And now when he switched, he had 8 offers, and he was finally offered by Amazon and hired for 46 LPA. From 5 LPA to 46 LPA in that 1 year.
Yes, he's seen everything then. He's seen being underpaid, and he is now seeing slightly on the line of overpaid.
Probably life has finally done justice for him and balanced it out.
So that's again a very good side, that life will do justice to you eventually. Okay, the next question is from Rahul. This is getting very popular, so I should ask this. Rahul is asking this question. He's a SSC from Aeon Labs from Mumbai. What would be your advice for one having experience in manual testing for more than 5 years? Considering there's so many automation tools, that's very true. There are so many tools coming: code, no code, half code, soft code, and not so coding skills. How would you suggest?
See, okay. So first of all, I assume that when you spent 5 years in testing, so you really understand the craft of testing really well, and you really know what is all about doing testing. And if you want to probably not go into automation, then the alternate career path for you at 5 years experience can be probably to go and start charting out and assisting to be a product owner at one point of time. You can also look at expanding your horizons and going into RPA as a field, because a lot of testers have actually also moved to robotic process automation because they understand how the requirements work, they understand how to connect requirements and how to use tools like UiPath or Automation Anywhere, which does not require a lot of coding skills, but with BPM skills you can do it. You can also move towards the data side if you have good analytical skills and you're not scared of statistics or maths, then you can move to data also. But if you want to continue to grow in testing, then I would recommend that you align yourself with a domain, right? There's a lot of need right now for good MS Dynamics CRM testers. There's a lot of good need right now for good Salesforce testers,
Salesforce, yeah.
right? And Salesforce testing, guys, will become a $30 billion market in the next coming years. $30 billion market.
My goodness.
And Salesforce testing does not require for you to be automation engineers. Actually, what you can do to become a good Salesforce tester, get Salesforce certified. Then your market value will be equivalent to any automation engineer. If you don't want to get into Salesforce, learn MS Dynamics CRM, get certified there. That would also help you. Now, again, I'm obviously going against what I said earlier on certification, but a certification in these tools is not about getting certified only.
Certified, yeah.
It is actually about learning how the internal schematic of these tools work. And these certifications have value.
That's that's true, because these are not generally about the software skills. These are about hard skills of that tool, and that like you actually said, that it gives you a view of the depth and the breadth of the tool. So I think that's why it's very important.
Correct.
I think that's a good question. So the next question again is very popular. It's becoming very popular now. Why there is no role like a like a big data tester or a data quality engineer in the market yet? Even if they are one in a million. I think he's trying to say something. From Dubai, Nitin is from Dubai. Yeah.
And Nitin is part of my team, was actually part of my team. So, and I know that this kind of question can only come from him. But yeah, there is actually a role, Nitin, of big data testers and data quality engineers, which exist. But again, I think that is a role which lies in between the two separate functions, which is testing and data. Somebody who has actually gone that path and acquired skills on a data side, and obviously with a testing mindset, these roles do exist. Unfortunately, the way these roles are classified right now are not under testing COEs or testing functions. They are qualified under data COEs or big data alignment, which actually is not the right place for these roles to be. A lot of people whom I know who are erstwhile ETL testers have actually graduated to become data testers. So that is again something which can definitely be achieved and done. And that is again a very, very good, lucrative field to be in the coming years.
Yeah. I think that's the question of Shiva also. He also had the same question, that should I start to, I'm an ETL tester, and should I start to learn data engineering and data testing?
Absolutely.
And I think you have answered it already. This is one question, yeah. So Karthik Raja from Aspire Systems, again, he's a senior test engineer from Chennai. He says, again, very popular topic these days in DevOps and testing. What's going to be the role there, and how do you see this this blend?
I think I've been one of the fierce proponents of testers being better DevOps engineers than the engineers themselves, because I firmly believe that a good test engineer can actually become a great DevOps guy. See, so DevOps again is something which has been glorified over the years, right? Because in my starting days, we always had release engineers. Now, what is typically, if you look at and talk to any DevOps guy, right, what they essentially do on a day-to-day basis is very close and similar to what a release engineer used to do. The only difference is the release engineer used to write their own Python or shell scripts. These days we have tooling available, and these DevOps engineers are able to marry these toolings together, create a great pipeline, and then make it effective. But one thing which you need to understand is DevOps is ineffective without test automation.
Correct.
And I've seen a lot of test automation guys graduating to become what you truly call complete CI/CD consultants.
That's true.
So when you talk about these guys, they actually pick up the DevOps tools. They already know the test automation tools, and they're actually able to bring more value or add more
Right.
value than
Yeah.
a typical DevOps guy. So
They can be the right bridge. They have the right bridge today, and they can be the right connecting dots in future also. Yeah, I
absolutely
think
true.
that's a very
So test engineers can definitely grow up to be DevOps guys. Guys, there's
DevOps
no
engineers.
challenge. Not only DevOps, there is another field which you guys can look up too is site reliability engineers. So
Yeah,
a lot
SREs.
of
Yeah.
test engineers can actually a natural career progression path for a lot of performance engineers can actually to become site reliability engineers.
Mhm. That's true. And I think over the last 45 minutes, we have talked about, we started this as feeling stuck. And now over the last 45 minutes, we have talked at least four different paths of what a tester can take. He can become a owner. He can become a DevOps engineer. He can become a SRE, and he can become a data scientist. They can become a that track. So we have already talked four tracks which a tester can take in the last 45 minutes, which the problem we were trying to solve before this session started. I think that's a great insight. Okay, this is a question from Tuba. So Tuba is a regular community participator, and she's from Karachi, Pakistan. She asked, "You asked spend about Microsoft Dynamics and Salesforce testers. What about IoT software testers? What's the scope for them?"
See, actually, IoT is a very fairly tricky area from a testing perspective because, okay, now when you talk about IoT, are you talking about the hardware which is leveraged in IoT, or are you talking about the applications which are built on top of the IoT hardware or sensors? Right? So personally, I don't have a lot of experience on the hardware side, but beyond the IoT hardware, if you talk about the apps being built on top of IoT devices, then it's same as our regular testing which we do. But with one of my customers, which is Dexcom, which is a medical company in San Diego. There I saw this marry of test engineers and IoT devices working together. I think they
Right.
beautifully crafted out what probably is IoT tester job profile should really look like because they trained their existing test engineers on that device, how the device schematics worked, and then they leveraged the knowledge they had on API testing, API automation, along with the device firmware. So they educated the testers on device firmware and leveraged the knowledge of API by banning these two things. So I
Yeah.
think if you are good at firmware testing, then probably your IT testing with your software skills can really help.
Correct. Correct. There's this question about 13 years experience. Just to wait. This is a question which I think we should take. Yeah. This is a question from Vikas, who's a senior manager at RBIT, Navi Mumbai. And this is a question which might be in the mind of a lot of mid management, mid senior level. What may be the alternate path for a tester having 13 years experience, average knowledge of automation, QDB, Selenium, Cypress, etc.? What's your thought for people like Vijay?
So Vijay, it essentially depends on what are you targeting as your next role. Are you targeting to become part of some testing COE? If yes, then obviously there are roles which is like are more like pre-sales consultants kind of a role, where a lot of the testing knowledge can be leveraged to win new projects, win new RFPs. Those kind of career path exist for you, right? The second is like we discussed about being a product owner or a scrum master. Those are also the paths which exist for you. And I think one role, right, which is very critical and where we again have a lot of scarcity of good people, is people who can be test consultants.
Yeah.
So even within my own organization, I'm hiring for right now 5 test consultants, and those are the people who bring years of testing experience, but are good at, and I'm qualify this, are good at conducting workshops with the end customer, who can really conduct workshops to identify the problem and brainstorm to find a solution. People who are good at doing assessments of any project under testing or in
Yeah.
development and identify the gaps there. Third, people who are good at estimating the effort or
Yeah.
defining the strategy. So if you are good at these 4 skills, then share your resume with me. I will hire you.
I think Vijay, you might just get a job here, so you should really connect Vikas after this session. Okay, because this is the next question is my question, and this is slightly philosophical in my head. You said when a lot of testers become product owners, they hide their previous testing backgrounds as if they were product owners since they were born, let's say. And my question is, and my thought here is that this is because we, as the IT industry in general, we as testers consider ourselves as accidental testers. We always wanted to develop code first. There will be very few people like you who move from dev to code testing. But a lot of us are first-time developers wannabe and who move towards testing, and we consider ourselves accidental testers. How do we change the approach? In my head, we change the approach uh, when we see a lot of CTOs, CEOs from a testing background. Then people will find the right role models. So how does a tester today, sitting at a 5 years, 10 years experience line, become a CEO, CTO, so that the testing craft becomes from an accidental testing craft to a actually wanting to be a tester craft?
I think one thing which I always mention in my webinars and with my one-on-ones or my open house with my teams is learn to speak up.
Yeah.
I think we as testers or as a testing community are ourselves to blame for being insignificant in calls, to being insignificant in meetings. A lot of testers, even though they have very good insight on the product, they have very good insight on tech, they fear to speak up in meetings,
Yeah.
right? And that is really the point where you really shy away from showing people that I can add value. A lot of testers would actually share those questions with their dev friends who probably may not even know half of it what they're asking, but you
Correct.
make them appear intelligent,
Correct.
right? When I go into a lot of qualification meetings these days, right? And when I start asking questions about architecture, I start asking questions about what tech stack, why this tech stack, I can tell you honestly, a lot of developers on the call don't have answers. So as a tester, take pride in what you are doing and ask questions, right? A lot of testers, when I see a lot of my teams going to projects, they are scared to ask for design documents. They don't ask the coding guideline document from developers. They don't ask architectural documents. They're happy to have those functional requirement document and create test cases.
Great.
Why don't you ask for the next three? They're also important for you to define your test strategy. So the moment you start asking these questions, you'll find people respecting you. Now coming to the next part of the question which you asked about how testers can become CTOs or VP engineering. If you look at a lot of good startups in India right now, I can name at least 5 to 10 where the testers have grown to become data engineering, VP engineering, and CTOs. Few of
Okay.
my very good friends in the community who contribute, Mayank Dikshit, he started as a test engineer, right? He's right on director engineering in Quick Heal.
Acha. Okay.
Nitin, again a very good friend of mine, he started as a tester. Was he was working with me at one point of time. He's right now chief digital officer of Edelweiss Financial.
My goodness. There is scope. You just need to
There
speak
is
up, I
hope.
guess.
There are examples of so
Examples.
many people who
Yeah.
graduated from being testers to VP engineering, data engineering, and CTOs, right? I myself right now play the role of CTO for 4 different
Yeah.
startups.
Yeah.
So there's nothing stopping you guys. It's just that you have to be, like I said,
That would be
don't have that feeling of entitlement, deserve it.
yeah. Deserve it. And most importantly, right, like you said, start speaking up and not just speaking up for the sake of speaking up. Speaking up because you know it. A lot of
Correct.
people mislead it to the fact that मेरे को बोलना ही बोलना है. Like, sorry for going into Hindi, but I have to speak somehow. I have to stay relevant in that discussion, and
Correct.
so I should speak something. But then that can become detrimental also because that speaking is not going to add value.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think I'll take the last few questions. So this one is from Kalyani. She's saying she's a SDET at Plainview, Bangalore. There's a buzz going on towards performance testing for a variety of applications in the market. how can I prepare myself or where to focus to enter the performance testing zone?
I think, Kalyani, if you actually want to get into performance engineering, right, and I'm assuming you are an SDET right now, my advice to you, for you would be to focus on chaos engineering. Pick up that skill because that is going to be a bigger skill and a bigger need going forward than play performance engineering. And probably going a step further, try to find out a career path which helps you move towards site reliability engineering. Because see, sooner or later, automation testing or SDETs will become a commodity, right? But site reliability engineers are very few in the market right now, and that is a good progression path for anybody who has good coding skills, good understanding of tech and architecture. Guys, aspire to be a site reliability engineer.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, guys, this is a devil's advocate question. This is from Karthik Raza. He said, why do we need to move out of testing? Testing is an inevitable part of any software. Only requirement is that alongside testing knowledge, we need to acquire the skills such as DevOps, data science, and apply those skills in testing and bring value. So that's a devil's advocate question we have been.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I think, see, I think one of the two key elements which Karthik has mentioned, right? Apply these skills as DevOps and data science into testing, right?
Correct.
So one of the patents which I have filed right now, which is still in approval stage, is about smart regression. So this is
Yeah,
something which I have implemented as part of my previous organization, where we leverage data science to identify what are the sweet spots to test by marrying the data from production and development lifecycle, and then using data science on top of it to marry those data together and bring that intelligence back into testing.
correct.
So definitely, like if you want to continue in testing, like I said, there are so many options where you can apply, increase your knowledge, and expand your way of contribution of areas where you can contribute. It's all about bringing value, guys. So if you can learn new skills and bring them back to testing and add value, please definitely.
Yeah, I think bringing value and communicating that you brought value.
Yes.
Communicating that brought value is equally important. That is speaking up
Absolutely.
that.
You should learn how to showcase what you're
Showcase.
contributing towards. Don't always wait for somebody else to observe that you're contributing
So, yeah.
and then appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's fairly logical also, because as a manager you have to look at 20 people for their contributions, but as contributor you have only one manager to showcase your contribution.
Correct. Yeah.
It's
So
slightly
yeah,
more logical.
take pride in your work and brag about your work.
Okay, so this again relevant because a lot of people want to slightly go broad in that sense. I work as a QA manager in a CAD/CAM product company. I'm looking to move into a more broader software testing area. Passionate about automation. How do you suggest me to prepare for applying for software testing job opportunities? This is relevant because a lot of people are into area slightly niche domains. They want to go slightly broad. This is from Shreya Soos from Alter Engineering.
So Shreyas, basically, if you're looking to move from a CAD/CAM product-based company and move into broader testing space, and what I would recommend you, CAD/CAM is essentially more product-based journeys, right? You already know how product testing really works. So I think for you to pick up an area and move from CAD/CAM to broader software testing genre, better approach would be to pick up another product and master it, whether it is Salesforce, whether it is ServiceNow, whether it is
Yeah.
Workday or any of these products. I think that is what I would recommend you pick up one of the products which align with your scope, become a master in that, and move. Another skill from a test automation standpoint, guys. If you want to pick up a skill from a test automation standpoint and don't really want to code a lot of it, then there are tools like Test IM. There are tools like ProVab. There are tools which exist there which don't require a lot of coding, but are going to be critical going forward in the test automation field. And if you are okay with picking up some programming skills, then instead of going for Java, Python, C Sharp, my recommendation will be to go for JavaScript because the future will be for JavaScript rather than these programming languages.
Yeah. Okay, this is a question, and I think that's more of a dilemma here. Uh, can you please share your insights on excelling in headless automation tool like Puppet rather than Selenium? which is have been talked more because I'm exposed to this tool in our organization. I want to know the answer for this from you. This is from Spurti, Vikas.
So Spurti, I think one thing which I've learned over my career is don't become fan of a tool. Tools would come and go. Today it is Puppeteer, tomorrow it will be something else. Today, yesterday it was Selenium, today it is Cypress. So
Yeah.
don't become aligned or don't become a tool engineer. Become an automation engineer and keep to your basics. So if you really want to have a long, rewarding career, right? I think you should always stick to the basics and pick up the programming language you want to excel in if you want to be in automation, right? But at the same time, automation is not all about your coding skills, right? So this is one thing which I tell all my team members. Automation is not the opportunity for you to showcase your coding skills. Automation is the opportunity where you actually show your testing skills. Because as an automation engineer, I expect you not only to write workable code, I expect you to write optimized code, which can help me test 10 scenarios with one single line of code.
That's true.
So testing skill is equally more relevant, and this is something which again, I'm not sure why it is becoming a trend. But when you talk to a lot of automation engineers, the first thing they would say, I don't like to test. I would only
Test.
write
Yeah.
code.
Code.
But
Yeah.
guys, if you as an automation engineer don't know basis of testing, then you really don't have much of value.
Yeah. Small experience from my small anecdote from my experience. When I led the testing teams, automation testing teams, I always gave them some manual testing exposure because it gives them two perspectives. A, because as automation testers, you have to solve problems in general, and unless until you have the exposure of testing, manual testing, you will not be able to figure out what testing problems to solve. And B, if you don't know what is a tester do, then you will be writing a script in your own world, and they'll be doing something in their own world, and you're not solving their problems in their.
Correct. And that is the main reason for a lot of automation projects why they fail, because
Yeah.
these two guys, a lot of automation engineers come sitting on their high horses and they see
Correct.
the testers as beneath them, and then
Correct.
I don't want to talk to a tester. I don't want to execute a test case.
Yeah.
This is
And then a classic battle between development and deployment occurs because but the automation testers will say, I have developed right. Or manual testers will say, this is not getting deployed. So none of this is working. And in the end, you end up wasting so much of effort and time for everyone. I think
absolutely.
the last question, which is from your initial thoughts. So there are testers, automation testers, or let's say testers who in general are getting 4x or 5x of their current salary. We showed an example. And there are testers who are struggling to find jobs. That's a classic gap of a societal gap in general also. So we discussed a lot of skills which a tester can acquire. And apart from that, are there any other thoughts which are in your head that how do we solve this gap of a lot of salary multipliers and no jobs uh, uh, being developed for testers?
This is a challenge, Ashutosh, not only with testing, but with dev also. And like I was talking
Yeah.
to a professor from IIM Ahmedabad a few days back, and I asked him the same question: that does everybody at IIM Ahmedabad get a 1 crore salary package? And his answer was only 5% of the people get that package. Remaining 80% people are following the same average salary bracket, right? So this is not an issue with us as testers. It is generally an issue everywhere. And I think for you to really get a multiplier offer, or actually to get a better offer, or switch your job, would be essentially not to try to mimic what someone else has done.
Exactly.
All of us know what is our strength, what is our weaknesses. You should always play to your strength. If your strength is being a good tester, right? And I'm telling you again from my experience in the last 18 months of hiring. Today, even a good functional tester is commanding 2x, 3x of his experience. So it's not only the automation guys who are getting multipliers, a good functional tester is also commanding money, but he's commanding money only if he's good at his craft.
Correct.
So being an average guy will not help you. Spend effort and time on honing your skills, improving your skills, and I think that is one way to get better jobs.
Correct. That's perfectly right. And I think we are just on time. And before I wrap up, I'll quickly summarize in very small, in a nutshell, what we discussed. So Vikas, from his experience of hiring and mentoring people, has given some really good points for us for testers here. And the bedrock of his section is that we should be working on improvising our craft and our skills, and everything else has to build on it, whether it's automation or anything else for that matter. We discussed multiple career paths which a tester can take. A tester can take path of a product owner, as a site reliability engineer, DevOps engineer, or a data engineer for that matter. And then we also discussed the importance of speaking up at the right time and with the right content in your head. So that's the few of the points we discussed. And let's all thank you, Vikas, for his time. And he's running a parallel meeting at this moment. So thank you so much for taking that effort and for your time, Vikas. And I really feel that testers should get more, they should feel better. They should not feel stuck, which was our problem when we started the session. And they will have certain paths to follow. And I really thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thanks, Ashutosh, for having me. And just to
Yeah.
let everyone know, guys, I intake a cohort of almost 75 testers every year who I spend time personally with, mentor them. So I would be opening up my cohort for this year in another week or so, where I'll take 75 people under my wings and work with them over the next 11 months.
Yeah. So I think that's a great opportunity for everyone to learn from Vikas, from his experience and from his knowledge of working with so many companies and with so many testers. Thank you, Vikas. Thank you once again.